Hold on to your butts.
Da-da-da. Oh, hello. Welcome to episode 92 of the Civil War Breakfast Club podcast. As always, I'm joined by Mary, a woman who is physically at home, but mentally she's still sitting at the bar at the Molly Pitcher's Brewery in Carlisle. I am just a vacant bar stool named Darren. Hey, Mary, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? And yes, Molly Pritchard's was a very cool place and excellent beers as always. And
so I'm gonna follow a few bar stools like that in my day, Mary. That place is pretty cool. Very good day. So what's happening with you? Anything exciting?
2 weeks into my Master Library Science program, we recorded episode 91 last week, which it was nice to be back after a hiatus, and I'm very excited for this week's episode. How about you?
Very good. Very good. Life is good. Summer is over. Fall is here. It's football season. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but here we are. So the weather is cool. So we're going to have some fun today, Mary. We have some guests again today. I think this is the first time that we've ever had dual guests.
It is. Yes. This is a new thing for us.
This is blazing a new path for us as we are joined by our friends Brett Kelly and Dane DeFabio from the National Civil War Museum in Harrisburg. So welcome, boys. How are you?
Good. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Can't complain. The weather's nice and everything's going well.
Yes, it's not humid anymore. It's not humid anymore. I think that day we visited you guys, it was quite humid outside. But yeah, as Darren said, we visited the National Civil War Museum back in August when we were in Gettysburg, and they gave us a very awesome tour. Got to see kind of behind the scenes and look at some really cool artifacts. We got to see the education space, which as a former education assistant in the museum field, I was quite impressed with that. I was like, wow, I never had a space like that to work in before. So that's pretty cool.
What a day that was. We just went there to expect to meet some people, and we got the real tour. We got the behind the scenes stuff, which is something that doesn't get to do. So it's just a fantastic overall experience. And it's a great museum. You know, I've heard about it many, many times, and I will be the first to admit I've never made it there before. Driven by that hill a million times. Mm-hmm. And so it was great to finally get in there. So you guys must be living the dream, get to be there every single day.
Yeah, it's, coming to work here every day. It never gets old. Everything here is old, but it never gets old. Nice. We, every day the phone rings and it's, somebody else who wants to do something with the museum, work with the museum, or donate artifacts to the museum. You just never know what it's going to be, but it's always interesting. And we're very fortunate to have the museum here in Harrisburg.
You're looking at all those documents we had. Oh, look, here's another one signed by Lincoln. Here's one signed by, it's like, come on.
The one signed by George Meade was my favorite. My gosh. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool.
So my question for you guys off the bat is, what was it that got you into your blood about the Civil War? What was the genesis of what drew you into this thing that we're all part of, that once it gets into your blood, it never gets out? How do you guys fall into this?
Dane, you want to go first?
Well, for me, my beginning of my interest in the Civil War started in the early 90s. My family was on a vacation to Florida. We were driving home and we stopped at a very popular restaurant chain that has a gift shop attached to it. And I saw a Union Kepi in there. And I thought, man, this is a really goofy looking hat. It's kind of funny looking. And so I asked my grandparents what this was. And my grandparents had only had high school educations. So they said, well, it's a Civil War hat. So I'm like, Civil War, what is this all about? What kind of conflict was this? And I just begged them to buy me the hat. And they bought me the hat. And was a Union Kepi purchased in Georgia. So at some time in history, that was probably a crime, purchase such a thing in Georgia. but on the way home from the trip, I just kept probing my grandparents with questions about everything they knew about the Civil War. And then it led to purchasing books after books, starting with coloring books because I was only 6 years old. Civil War coloring books are kind of a niche in themselves to get them. And then I got into the Ken Burns series. Then I got into giving speeches at originally for sixth graders. And then when I was about 12, 13 years old, I got into speaking for historical societies, did Memorial Day services as well, speaking about the Civil War, and also reciting the Gettysburg Address. And then basically from there, I was hooked. Had to pursue it as a career in college, grad school, and by coming to work here every day, it certainly is a dream to be able to work with all these items and also to inspire future Civil War historians and buffs. That's nothing better than that.
And you were the educator at the museum, correct?
Yes.
Very cool.
And Brett, what's your story? What about you?
I've always had an interest in history. When I was very young, I got a volume of the American Heritage Civil War volume, which I think I've heard a lot of people started their interest in the Civil War history from those volumes. As I got a little bit older, I continued my interest in history. I started off more towards the Revolutionary War. I grew up in Burlington, Vermont, which is Ethan Allen's hometown. His homestead was just about a mile away from where I lived. So that was sort of a focus when I was very young. As I got older, my family went on a trip down south to visit relatives in Atlanta. And we were fortunate enough to stop at various battlefields along the way, Gettysburg being one, Antietam, Fredericksburg. So that definitely piqued my interest. Later on in life, I joined the Marines. The Marines rely heavily on history to sort of build up the confidence of the recruits. They talk about all the Marines that came before, and you don't want to come up short or do less than what they did. So they really rely on history as a training tool, and so that just reinforced it all. As far as coming to work here, I kind of just sort of stumbled into it. Luckily, I was up here in Reservoir Park walking my dog, and I saw a big sign that said future site of the National Civil War Museum. And I just happened to be walking my dog with a friend of mine from the neighborhood, and it turns out that he was a fairly high placed in the city government. And he said, "Oh, do you want to work there? You want a job?" And I was like, "Sure." I had just gotten out of the Marines, and I was starting to look for work, and I was just kind of flabbergasted. I was like, "Yes, that would be awesome. I would do anything to work there. I'll clean the toilets. It doesn't matter." And I ended up being hired as the registrar. Started there and worked my way up into curatorial. Wow. And it's been fantastic ever since.
Hey, Mary, that stuff never happens to me. Never happens to me.
Never happens to me too.
I can't even find coins on my couch, and he finds a job at the museum.
Well, I've never won the lottery, but this will do.
I think you might have. So it's funny. You both talked about being in the North and going down to Georgia, so you're kind of cross-pollinating Union versus Confederate, which just brings up the next point, is kind of the whole mission statement of your museum. And you talk about how you want to, basically, as we witness the ongoing divisiveness in our country, more work needs to be done to achieve the founding principles of this country and the vision of our 16th president. Mayor, that's Abraham Lincoln. Just want to let you know.
Thank you.
Okay. But it says to this end, we will continue to provide balanced programming. So how important is it for you guys to make sure that even though your place is in the North in a very blue area, that you maintain that Confederate representation as well?
As far as the exhibits go, it's very important. It can be challenging at times because there just aren't as many Confederate artifacts available as there are Union, but we have been very fortunate in the artifacts that we have in the collection. We do have a large amount of Confederate artifacts. We've been able to really keep it pretty balanced. We don't pass judgment as to talk about why men fought, but we try not to pass judgment on the time. It was a different time, but we try and put it in context with the history of our country. At that time, things were a lot different than they are today, and you really have to look at it that way. It's sometimes difficult to separate the 21st century from the 19th century. But I think we do a good job of laying out the facts and giving our visitors the tools to, evaluate what was going on and make their own decisions how they want to interpret it.
Mm-hmm. We also make sure that we paint a broad picture of the Civil War, look at people from various walks of life. Our video composite, when you enter the first gallery here at the National Civil War Museum, introduce you to 10 different characters, Northern and Southern, men and women alike, slave and free, and also urban and rural. And you get a sense how those individuals' lives contributed to the development of different experiences, and also get a sense of how the war had a different impact on those individuals based on really how close they were to the action or how embedded they were in the home front, either if the war was at their doorstep or many miles away.
Yeah. With every aspect of the Civil War, you have so many different points of view. Literally millions of men fought during the Civil War throughout those 4 years. And every single person who either fought on the front lines or was at home trying to take care of the farm, trying to make sure that life goes on as the soldiers are away. Everyone had their own point of view as far as what the war was like. And we really want to, bring that out. We want the personal stories told. We don't want it to just be a rosy picture of, everything was, all the soldiers were gallant, all the people back home were patient. We want to bring out the stories, the real stories. Soldiers who were in the ranks, when they wrote home to their wives, there was a lot of, love letters and that type of stuff, a lot of things like religion and things that you'd expect, but there was a lot of talk about money and how the family is going to be taken care of. A lot of things. If you read a letter from a soldier who was in Afghanistan or Iraq, the letters would be very similar to what they were during the Civil War. A lot of times they're very practical. They're talking about what their kids are going to do when they grow up, what they're going to, how they're going to be influenced, how they're going to get their education, how it's all going to be paid for, how they're going to live from day to day. In the North, the home front was far away from the battle lines. So there, it wasn't as, the stories might not be as exciting, but they're definitely practical. You can identify with being at home while your husband is away fighting. In the South, it's another perspective entirely. The home front could be the front. It could be the front lines of a battle. We did get that experience in the North a little bit with Gettysburg, quite a bit. But, generally the battles were fought in the South. So the home front was oftentimes right where the fighting was. The husband in the ranks might be worried just as much about his family at home as they are worried about him, because the front could shift at any time. There's just so many stories, and we're just really privileged to be able to tell these stories through artifacts, educational programs, our speaker series. It's really just a fantastic resource for the community to be able to come up here and learn all about our history.
Yeah, a lot of what we do is we try to bring out that personal level with the podcast. We said many times, corps are made of divisions made of brigades are regiments, but regiments are made of companies that are made of husbands and sons and brothers. And when you start looking at that grassroots level, look up instead of the generals looking down, it tells a much more personal story. And so I love the diaries. I love the letters. I love telling people that they didn't talk like question your valor, sir. That's not how really they talked. Right. Like Gone with the Wind. It was. These are people who were sustaining themselves day to day, worrying about their families back home, how they were going to feed them. did they join? Why did they join this? Did they do this for the right reasons? Would I be a coward not to? So all those stories are really, really important. So that was one thing that definitely stood out to us. We went to visit was you were definitely selling on the same side of the street for you guys, for us.
Yeah. And I definitely found it was a very balanced view. Like you have, what the uniforms look like for the Union troops, but then, you've also got the Confederates as well. So it people can learn about both sides and go through the museum that way. And
absolutely,
it's like you guys do a great job with that.
Thank you. And it's, it's an ongoing thing. It's not something that doesn't change, because as much as we want to separate the 21st century from the 19th century in telling the story, it's a thin line to walk and be able to tell stories that are engaging and that people want to hear. There's a lot of viewpoints today, just like there were back then. And sometimes when people hear about, it's a war, it's going to talk about slavery, it's going to talk about divisiveness. And, some people just don't want to hear that, or they want to hear it in such a way that it doesn't make them feel bad or, make their region look bad, that type of thing. So it is kind of a fine line to be able to tell the true history, be able to tell the stories of the individuals, and just put the facts out there and really let them, decide for themselves. Is this what I want to hear? Is this, going to be something that's important to me, that after I leave the museum, am I going to want to go home and look some of this stuff up and really dive into it some more? We hope that that's what people will do, is leave here with that spirit of curiosity, of, wow, I wonder if I had any relatives that fought in the Civil War. If I know I had relatives that fought in the Civil War, but I want to know more about them. I want to know where they were. Where did they fight? What were they fighting for? We try and really inspire. I think that's, one of the biggest things. We want to be able to do, we want to be able to inspire. We want to be able to entertain also. People need to come in here and have a positive experience. It can't all be all doom and gloom, but war is not a pretty thing. It's something that you really are facing the realities of what has happened in our country. And, you can't always just talk about the things that are fun to talk about. We talk about slavery, point blank. It was a miserable thing. It was terrible, but it's something that we need to know about. We can't just not talk about it, because, we know that memory is a short thing. If you don't know about your great grandparents and there's nobody there to tell you about them, or if you don't have the interest in looking them up, your children aren't going to have any more interest in them either. It just kind of goes away unless you do the work, unless you have the interest to dig into what happened back then. So, we hope to inspire people to look into their past, to look into, maybe look into themselves and, think, where would I have stood, during that time in our country's history? It's such a fascinating subject that we hope that people who are kind of on the fence about history and they're just being dragged here by their parents or something like that, maybe they'll get a spark, and they'll really want to just jump right in. We can always hope.
And that leads into my next question. So Dane, working with students, how, that's the one struggle I think we all have in this field, is getting the younger generation into it. So what ages of students are coming into the museum or that you're working with? And I'm guessing you probably have to make it pretty interactive for it too with your program.
Yes. And I experience school groups coming into the museum that are mostly in the intermediate levels, 4th through 6th grade, through the middle school level. We have some high school students that come, many of them on trips where they're traveling quite a distance from their school, maybe for a extended weekend type of field trip plan. and then I've even had some college level students come through the museum as well. It's important to, when you're interacting with such a diverse group of students, to be able to take in, kind of read the room. That's my experience with presenting. Try to think about the background demographics of the students, the interests that they have at the moment, and then try to find the immediate connections that they could relate to. Like, one of the stories we like to tell a lot of here at the Civil War Museum is of the stories of drummer boys, of individuals who had went away or got their parents' approval, or maybe were orphans who went away to serve in the war as either part of the Navy, part of a regiment. We have a photograph of a young boy who joined the Army actually in Alcatraz Island in California.
Wow.
Served in the cavalry when he was 11 years old, and then ended up serving in the post-war Army as well. Made a whole career out of the military, and basically that was his experience. We also have a photo of a Union Navy veteran. Was killed on the USS Galena at Drury's Bluff, and he was only 14 years old.
14, yeah.
Wow. So that those inroads you can make with youth are excellent. When I was starting out in the field, it was a much easier task to do when you were so young. The younger you are, the easier you can you become more approachable for students. But one of the things I like to do for each of my programs as well is also make connections to the actual community that those visitors are coming from, research the soldiers and sailors and people on the home front that had experienced Civil War in their own way and made those stories known to us. And then by making that backyard connection and explaining how much more of the world they got to see because of their service in the military, or how their lives were just so drastically changed because of the war, that they made their own contributions as members of that Civil War generation. One of the new trends I noticed in researching the Civil War is just how there's so much of an emphasis on how veterans after the war struggled to become reacclimated to civilian life, and how that trauma lingered with them. But so many of those veterans also worked over those struggles, and they created quite impressive careers for themselves as businessmen and women, diplomats, as activists. And those individuals' stories should really linger with us today, and give us a sense of inspiration for what we deal with in our own struggles in our daily life, and inspire us to seek ways to improve ourselves and seek leadership skills to make inroads in those areas. And that's an important lesson that I think students of all ages, young through adult, can learn from the Civil War generation.
Absolutely, yeah. And we've talked about that on our podcast too, like just the kind of the post-war struggles that these men had, and even some of them during the war too, probably struggled as well.
For people who don't know, the National Civil Museum is located right in Harrisburg. Okay, it's a great location, and right over Reservoir Park, the area. And so I guess it's not far from Gettysburg. I wonder if how you guys help bring the Gettysburg tourists to Harrisburg who maybe aren't as maybe knowledgeable as how much Harrisburg played into both the Maryland campaign in '62 as well as the Gettysburg campaign. What do you do to help attract those people to get out of the Adams County, out of the borough, to get you into your museum?
Well, that's been sort of the question since we opened. Is how do we get a little bit of that tourist traffic here to Harrisburg? And while we are only 35 minutes away, it can be difficult because Gettysburg is an amazing place. Nothing beats the battlefield when you're actually standing on it. And we've done various programs that sort of go between here and Gettysburg. We've brought one thing that we do is we have tours that we set up that we actually bring artifacts down to Gettysburg, artifacts that were actually used on the field at Gettysburg. And we have our tour, and at different stops along the tours, we'll take out a specific artifact and allow people to actually hold it. We'll, make sure everybody on the tour has their gloves, and we make sure that the artifacts that we choose for this are very stable. Things like, artillery shells, or things like that, or pieces that are framed or encased in mylar, so that excessive handling won't damage them at all. And so we try and bring the history really back to life as far as having the actual artifacts on the field. So we do that. We sort of almost like bringing the museum to Gettysburg. We've done this with other battlefields as well, Fredericksburg. We've been down to Antietam. We've done programs like this. So we are really trying to not only attract people to the museum, but also bring the museum out to people as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the important thing to do, right? Is the two kind of go hand in hand, because the museums are there for preservation, for people to come look at the items and see the exhibits. But then you go to the battlefield and after seeing it, you have an idea of what went on there.
Right. And to actually be able to say, hold a rifle that was used at Gettysburg, standing there in the place where it was actually used during the battle, you're going to remember that. And that's going to, you'll take that home with you. Not the rifle, but you'll take that memory home with you. And, you'll always remember that. And, hopefully through word of mouth and, advertising as much as we can, hopefully over time, that will draw people in. They'll see what we're trying to do here. As programs that are unique and different. There's a lot of museums that are trying to do new things, and we're right there. We're trying to encourage people to come and see us, and those are the types of programs that we have developed over the years, including things like this podcast. We want to be involved in things like this, anything to do with outreach. Dane goes out to schools. We go out to special events around town and set up a table with, we have reproduction artifacts so that, people can pick them up and, use them. We have a reproduction drum for kids to beat on a little bit, that type of stuff. So we want to, educate people, we want to inspire people, and we want to create memories as well.
Well, there's such a good history right in your area too. I mean, we always suggest go to Gettysburg, kind of get out of the borough a little bit, right? Go check out, Monocacy in Maryland, go to Monterey Heights, and where you are, you're not far from Fort Couch, from Fort Washington. There's a lot of places right in Harrisburg. And we've always said that, if not for Antietam, Harrisburg might be a bigger place in mainstream history right now. If Jackson doesn't die and the Confederates still have two corps, that battle could very well be in Harrisburg. not Gettysburg.
Right.
So you think about how much history takes place in that. So one of the things that I was still impressed by and blown away by was the stuff you guys have. What are some of your favorite items that you have either on display or in the secret back room that you like?
The secret back room.
There's some things that if there's maybe a couple things you look at and you go, man, that is so cool. I can't believe we have it. What are some personal favorites you guys have?
Well, for me, it's a difficult question because, I've been here for 22 years approximately, and I look at all of the artifacts as just absolutely precious and inspiring. And it's really hard to say, well, yeah, I like this one better than the other. There are artifacts that are crowd pleasers, like, weapons and flags and uniforms, things like that. But it really depends on the story behind the artifact. I like to say, it could be a camp spoon or, a tin cup or something like that. It really depends on the story behind it. We do have an example of one camp spoon. It's a folding camp spoon. And what's really neat about that is this particular one belonged to General Grant. It was presented to him in a mess kit that President Lincoln presented to him as sort of a thank you for allowing his son, Robert Todd Lincoln, to serve on his staff. So he got him a set of field utensils in this little kit, and they're all engraved with General Grant's name on it. And we have the spoon from that kit. So, how cool is that?
That is amazing.
And there's all sorts of other little things that, you might not give a second glance to, but if you stop and really look at these things, a carving that was done at Andersonville or Libby Prison, a piece of hardtack that was saved by a soldier, and there's a little painting of it, of an American flag on it. We have a frame that was made out of little wooden pegs, and that was made by a convalescing soldier who was wounded at Cold Harbor. So all these little things can be just as interesting and just as amazing as the big, the big picture things, like the flags and the uniforms and the guns. And so for me, I hate to say that I actually have favorites, but I'm originally from Vermont. And so whenever we get something in from Vermont, I do kind of perk up a little bit. Yeah, that's really neat, but I think I'm a little bit, I sort of tilt towards that because I'm, from New England. So New England pieces really kind of, get me jazzed.
Definitely. David, what about yourself? David, I know we were up there. You were pretty excited about some stuff too, but what are some things you like to check out?
Well, I'm kind of in the same boat as Brett, as in it's hard to pick an actual object that is a favorite for me, but I'm also tend to be inclined to take greater interest in objects from Eastern Pennsylvania. I'm from the Lehigh Valley region in Pennsylvania. Found out I had 10 Civil War ancestors that all served in the same company of the same regiment, Company G of the 153rd Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry, an 11th Corps Regiment.
Nice.
That at Chancellorsville was right on the edge of the right flank, with only another regiment from New York to face Jackson's flank attack. They were also at Barlow's Knoll and East Cemetery Hill at Gettysburg. It was just a 9-month regiment. But one of the most impressive donations that we had recently acquired while I was working here was the sword of a soldier who I had researched in graduate school, Captain Theodore Hart Howe of the 153rd, who was in Company D of that regiment. So in graduate school, I was mining his letters, which are at various institutions, and trying to research him in depth. But the artifact we have is a model 1850 foot officer sword, and it is missing its scabbard. And through all my research, I was unable to find a newspaper article that featured his daughters holding that sword and told the story of how he, on the retreat from Barlow's Knoll, stuck it into the ground in a field, was wounded, and then as he recouped in a Gettysburg hospital and came back to better health, he went out to recover that sword, which that rusty sword really resonates with me. Another artifact we have from the collection that is from that area of Pennsylvania is the personal effects of a John Cunius, who served in the 13th Pennsylvania Cavalry, and he created a display box with a glass front on it and door to open up, and he literally put all of the items that he came home with from the war, his cavalry saber, little flag, some hardtack, a cup, his revolver, all of that, just packed it away, just like he left it there for someone else to discover. So that's one of those artifacts that really resonates with me as well.
Yeah.
It's one of those personal things, and people, got to realize this wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't. It wasn't.
Oh, absolutely. We meet people all the time here who will say, my grandfather fought in the Civil War. It's really amazing to think for that person, the Civil War was only 3 generations ago. I remember watching I was down in the last gallery where we have a video that plays. It's about the 1913 50-year anniversary of Gettysburg, the reunion there. And there was an older lady watching the video, and I asked her how she was enjoying her tour. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, it's wonderful." And she points at the screen and she goes, "I was there in 1938. I was with my grandfather, and he was a private in the Union Army." And that's just, to me, that's just incredible. Because you think about Civil War soldiers and people who lived during the Civil War, you tend to think of them in terms of black and white, photographs or statues, that type of thing. They don't really all the time seem like real people. But for her, that was her grandfather. And that was a very vivid memory for her.
Wow, that would be incredible too.
Yeah.
When I had my holy crap moment, I was sitting in Gettysburg one time. Shockingly, Mary, I was at a bar in Gettysburg or at Sweeney's. I know, and there was an old codger sitting there, and he's probably gone now. It was about 10 years ago, but I was talking to him like I tend to do, talk with people at these places, talk about history, and I shook his hands, and he goes, "You shook the hand of a man just now who shook the hand of a Confederate soldier who fought here." I was like, how the heck is he was a small child in 1938, and he went to the reunion, and he met one. So that was one of those wow moments for me. And people need to realize that, there are pictures, and they're gray, black and white, and they're old. But it wasn't that long ago. You go to these parades now, July 4th parade, and you don't see too many anymore, unfortunately, but you'll see the World War II veterans. They'll come down. Yep. And when my grandfather won one of those parades, it was Civil War veterans, and so and that's what really resonates when you get into these personal stories like the ones you guys have over your place.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, speaking of relics, I know we're not doing this on video, but you got something cool behind you I know you guys wanted to talk about.
We have a few artifacts here.
Yep.
We have a Sharps rifle here. This rifle was captured in battle on October 5th, 1862 at the Battle of Hatchie Bridge by Lieutenant William M. Reed. He was with the 15th Illinois Cavalry. And the soldier that he captured it from, the Confederate soldier, was with the 6th Arkansas Mounted Infantry. And after he had captured the soldier with his weapon there, the soldier told him that he had been told, so, take it with a grain of salt, that rifle was one of the original Beecher's Bibles, the ones that were shipped up and sent out to Kansas during Bloody Kansas.
Oh, wow.
In a box marked Bibles. And he wrote that in his diary. Lieutenant Reed wrote that in his diary, that's what he was told by this Confederate soldier. He said, apparently after things had settled down in Kansas, the weapons were collected and shipped to the arsenal in Little Rock. And that's where it came from. That's how it got into the hands of the Confederates. Whether that's true or whether that's just a story that the Confederate told his captor, who knows? But that's the story that the soldier who captured that rifle believed enough to write it down in his diary. Oh. So that's really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. There's also we have a holster here. It's just a revolver holster from a cavalryman. His name was Henry W. Chester. He was with the 2nd Ohio Cavalry. And what's neat about this holster is in his memoirs, he actually had written his memoirs about, and part of it talks about this holster in particular. He had been in a battle down near Winchester, and his company of the 2nd Ohio had charged the Confederates. He had gotten ahead of his company and had to end up charging right through the Confederates. They gave chase. Wow. He was eventually captured, but then his men came back, and so the Confederates had to let him go. But they had taken his revolver at that point, and they also took his gun belt, but he had held on to the holster. And what's neat is his horse had run away. It had made it back to his company, and it took part in that charge. Wow. Alone without him on it. Wow. But it was unfortunately eventually captured. But as he was kind of left behind as his men chased away these Confederates, a Confederate cavalry trooper who had been dismounted, he came upon him, and the soldier had a carbine. And so he basically walked right up to him and pulled out his holster and pointed it right at his face, like up close, so close that if you see the front of the holster, it has sort of a hole in it. The Confederate soldier couldn't tell that it wasn't actually a gun, that it wasn't a revolver. And so he demanded his surrender because he had what he thought was a gun pointed to his face. So he surrendered, and Lieutenant Reed took his carbine and then started laughing. and he said, "I didn't even have a gun. This is a holster. You had me dead to rights." And he said he told that to the Confederate, and the Confederate started laughing too. So, kind of interesting how in the thick of battle, things can just turn so quick from, being in a charge to being captured, to being freed, to being almost captured again, to bluffing your way out of it, and then capturing an enemy soldier with an empty holster. It's little things like that I'm sure every war has lots of those stories, but it's neat that we have the holster here in the collection. And when you look at it, it does. You can't. If it was
does look like a gun. Like,
be able to tell.
Yeah. That is really cool.
Yeah. We also have a saddle valise here. This actually belonged to Jefferson Davis.
Oh, wow.
This is his saddle valise. And this was captured in Irwinsville, Georgia on May 10th, 1865, when Jefferson Davis was captured. It was captured by Daniel Graham, who was, I believe, a corporal in the 4th Michigan Cavalry. Yep. And with this, we also have a newspaper article from, I think it's 1911, when Graham was older, and he's holding this saddle valise, posing with it, and they took his picture. And so we have that as well. So it's got very good provenance, and it's just a really unique piece that talks about that the end of the war. And again, we're very fortunate to have that.
Yeah, it's amazing collection. You have that. Wow.
Yeah. And we have artillery shells. This is an artillery shell that was thrown into Carlisle by Jeb Stuart's horse artillery. Didn't explode. And so, it was recovered, and through the years it passed through, I'm sure, many hands, and it was eventually acquired for this museum. We have a piece of case shot that's been blown apart. You can see the shot inside the round portion of the shell. This was actually from the Allegheny Arsenal in 2017, just 5-6 years ago. They were doing some excavating there. They were for construction on the site of the Allegheny Arsenal, and they came across a whole horde of case shot that were still fully primed and ready to go. So they had to call in the Army Corps of Engineers, and they gathered up all of these unexploded shells and brought them up to Fort Indian Town Gap near Harrisburg, where they had them destroyed, basically blown up in place. I think they saved one or two for their museum. But after that, I got a call, and they said, if you want to come on up, we have all these, shell fragments that we just finished blowing up. If you want to come up and, pick some out for your museum, come on up. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. So I went up there, and they had these big bins just full of these things. I had to actually climb inside the bins because it was really tall to be able to reach them. And, I was like, wow, this one's great. This one's great. And so when all was said and done, I gathered up about 100 chunks of these exploded case shot from the Allegheny Arsenal. And when I got them back to the museum, that's when I realized I have to clean all these things because they're like super rusty. But I've cleaned quite a few of them now, and we've had them on display, and we've used them in educational programs and things of that sort. But I still have quite a few left to go. So sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for.
That is so.
It's a nice problem to have.
That is so cool. That's really
cool. I could go on all day as far as the artifacts that we have in the collection and the stories behind them. It just goes on, which is, and like I said, it never gets old. It's like Christmas every day working here. We're very fortunate.
What's great about you guys too, not only you guys have a great amount of displays, it's a really pretty place to go visit, both in and outside, but you do a lot of events. And I know next weekend is a big weekend for you guys. This is going to drop on Saturday. So the following weekend of the week 23rd is your Blue and Gray Gala, which sounds like a lot of fun, Mary. People could all get a chance to get dressed up in period gear or dress casual. A lot of fun stuff. So what do you got going on that day?
Well, at the gala, we have the reception that goes from 6 to about 8:30. We have silent auctions. We have our caterers that cater our events here. They're going to be set up throughout the galleries with different stations, so people who come to the gala can sample their wares. Everything from gourmet foods to beers to mixed drinks, even. The distilleries and breweries in the area will be here, and they'll be represented. So there's, that's a really great time. We're actually going to have an artillery company here, or battery here, to kind of kick off the gala. They'll be firing off a shot to officially start it, and then they'll be here the next day. We'll have actually 6 artillery pieces here the following Saturday, that Saturday, as a part of our Civil War Days, which Dane has been instrumental in helping put together. So I'll let him talk about that.
That event is called Civil War Saturday. It'll basically run from 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon on Saturday, September 24th. Admission will be at a reduced rate that day, $10 for adults, and kids under 18 are free.
Nice.
And that'll feature artillery, infantry, and cavalry reenactors, Union reenactors, to kind of almost do a mock recreation of Camp Curtin, Harrisburg's Civil War training camp. And we'll also have demonstrators doing period photography, we'll have people doing period woodcraft and woodwork, and demonstrations of things that you'd see around the home. We'll have the sanitary commission there as well, and we'll have living historians from various ranks, including General Grant himself and his wife Julia.
Very cool.
Yeah, the website talks about live artillery. I assume you mean reenactment. Give him a spook downtown if firing K shots out of the city. but that would that definitely piqued my interest when I read that this morning.
They'll just be firing blanks, but it's still pretty loud.
I'll tell you, those like 8 ounces of powder versus 2 pounds, no question. And that's a great deal because, like you said before, it's only $10 to get in. Kids under 18 free, and that looks like a lot of fun. And even going back to that blue and gray gala, I mean, that's very economical as well. I mean, you're talking $75 a person, $125 for a couple, only $50 if you're a member. So it's great. And as soon as you mention beer, people can't see, but Mary's eyes all perked up. She sat up straight in the seat when you mentioned that. So if you're into the beer and wine, you can certainly take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, and it's a really great time. It's just a relaxing evening out. It's fancy, but it's comfortable. You can go dressed casual, or you can put on your frock coat and really do it up. Your top hat, whatever you want to do.
Epaulets,
the whole
scale.
Yeah, the whole thing. And so it's a really good time. And everyone who goes there each year just raves about how much fun it is. So we're really excited for this year's gala.
Sounds very cool.
And jumping ahead in the calendar, on the 15th of October, you have the symposium with U.S. grants that's going to be taking place, which is going to be another great event. So this is not your grandfather's museum we're talking here. This is a very interactive, interesting place with a lot of events. They even do weddings there, Mary. Imagine that. Very cool. 5,500 square foot banquet hall, up to 200 guests. Yeah. So maybe we'll get invited to a wedding there someday.
We do it all here, and we're working on more of those types of things where people can come and enjoy the museum, but also enjoy other aspects of the museum. We hope in the future to be doing some Halloween related type things. Cool. We are kind of figuring that out, but hopefully maybe someday we'll have like a haunted hayride. Civil War hayride or something along those lines, or haunted galleries, that type of thing. We're always looking for ideas. So, any of your listeners out there who got some good ideas about what they might like to see here at the museum, let us know. We'd absolutely, be thrilled with trying to collaborate with our visitors and with people who are interested in the museum.
Create some new events. Like we've done big screen movies on the grounds behind the museum. Mm-hmm. We're considering doing plays, historical plays and performances. The ballroom yourself, which you mentioned, is used frequently for, besides just weddings and baby showers or bridal events. We have corporate events, corporate rentals, and everything. So it's we'll cater to your venue. That's our mission.
That's cool. And for listeners in the Harrisburg area, you guys have a volunteer program too, right? For people to come volunteer at the museum.
Yes, we have a volunteer program that is involved with anything from interpretation in the galleries and displaying reproduction artifacts to kind of help that novice visitor get a sense of what a 9.5-pound musket really feels like when it's in your hands, to volunteers who are in our archives and in our artifact collection that are assessing the condition of artifacts, or also transcribing letters, transcribing text from the original hands of Civil War soldiers, whether it be documents in English or in their native language. We've had volunteers work on.
And COVID kind of put a bit of a wrench in the works. So we had to say goodbye to our volunteers for a while, but we're starting to bring them back now. And, we're always looking for new volunteers. There's plenty of things to do up here, and it's interesting work. If you can, read cursive, that definitely helps.
Yep.
A lot of the letters that are transcribed in the archives, written by soldiers. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, we had a donation of about 35 letters. And as I was going through them, one of the letters was actually written at Andersonville Prison.
Wow.
Just kind of in the middle of all these, there's, this letter that's got, red, Georgia clay on it. I mean, it's just amazing to, see something like that. It's been, with the family for all these years, not seen by anybody. And then all of a sudden there it is, right in front of us. Mm-hmm. And, it's just amazing things like that, that we come across all the time. So, if anyone's interested in that type of thing, let us know. And there are definitely volunteer opportunities here.
Very cool. Yeah, I was looking over the form, but I'm like 7 hours away.
We'll get down there full time eventually. We'll be volunteering. Yeah. If you ever need an Oliver Otis Howard interpretive age of somebody, you got this one right here. You'll be all over that. But we would definitely look forward to it a lot. But it's a great museum. We'll get ready to get back to work here in a little bit, but it's obviously a very economic museum. I believe it's $15 to get in as an adult, and as a student, it's $13. You guys got a great family package for $56, which allows 2 adults and 3 students. So we're not talking about a very expensive thing. Yep. If you're in Gettysburg and you go way more often than you probably should, like us, and you don't get to that museum, shame on you all because it's so close. And you'll see some things that you'll never forget. Whether you
and anybody who signs up as a member, a one-time fee, membership fee, and you can come back as many times as you want. So that's definitely something to look into as well.
Definitely. Well, look, we'll let you guys go. We really appreciate the time. I mean, we're big fans of you guys. We'll be visiting you guys many, many times. You'll definitely see us volunteering down there at some point.
Awesome.
We look forward to it. So, Brett Kelly, you're the curator. Dane DeFabo, you're the executive education director. So you guys have a lot of responsibility. I'm very envious of both of your jobs. Yes. And you can tell by both of your passion that you guys both feel the same way about the stuff as we do. It really resonates to people who talk with you guys, how excited you are about your museum. So anybody who's listening to this, get out to the museum. It's a very cool place to go. It's a very easy place to get to, just outside of the town.
It's perfect for a day trip too. If you're in Gettysburg and it's a rainy day, and even if it's not a rainy day, just take a drive down the road to Harrisburg and go see it.
Absolutely.
And the view there is incredible as well. And it's a great exhibit. I would say, I saw some kids when I was there. I would say, if I was a kid and I was able to go to the museum, I'd be super happy to be there. I think you're able to hit all those different learning types as well. It's not just artifacts, but it's these exhibits. Before we start recording, I was telling you guys the Cushing exhibit was that was really haunting. But
I'll tell you, I felt that Cushing exhibit, gentlemen. You know what I mean. You'll feel when you see that one. But it's a fantastic place. It's so interpretive. It's got a lot of very unique things that a lot of the other places that the Gettysburg National Museum doesn't have, and other places like that. So, so get out of the burg, change burgs, go from Gettysburg to Harrisburg, and go check out some things. Yep. Definitely go say hi to these guys. They'd be happy to show you around. So
absolutely.
So a lot of stuff coming up down the pike for you guys as well.
Yep.
So Mary, I think this is a great talk. I think this is great. I'm very excited to get back. I can't wait. It's like jumping in the car right now and head down there again.
Oh, me too. And thanks to our listeners.
Anytime.
Thank you to our listeners for listening to this episode, and be sure to get out if you're in the area. Get to the National Civil War Museum. It's an amazing spot. As for us at the podcast, our next episode is going to be about Special Order 191, and that'll be probably dropping, if not next week, the week after. We will be having our roundtable in a few weeks as well, which we'll make an announcement about that on social media. And we'll be having a Facebook Live, not this weekend, but the weekend after. So that would be September 24th, which is the day of Civil War Saturday at the Civil War Museum. So any parting words from you, Darren?
Well, just that if you're at the National Civil War Museum, drop by, get down there, tell them the Civil War Breakfast Club sent you, tell them we said hello, and really enjoy it. Because I guarantee you that once you go that first time, you're going to go back, because there's a lot of cool stuff. They rotate their stuff very, very well, and you'll definitely get a better perspective. You'll see a lot of different things that aren't just specific to Gettysburg Relay or Antietam or wherever you happen to go. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. It really was a pleasure for us, because it was great to see you guys again. It was great. Thanks for hosting us that day and seeing all that really, really cool stuff. Yes, and I challenge everybody listening to this to go down and see that stuff. See that stuff on your own. So, guys, appreciate it. Have a great weekend. And this will drop on Saturday. So we hopefully you can check it out, and hopefully this gives you a little bit of a bump in your attendance, because it's really a jewel that really needs to be taken advantage of in town.
Thanks so much for having us on your podcast. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Guys, it was a pleasure, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, take care.
You too.
Take care.
Guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
See you guys later. Bye.